Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Dr. Cameron Matthews. I'm one of the founders and co-directors of the Tour for Diversity in Medicine, the one that's probably been emailing you in some way or working with the students in SNMA and LMSA to organize this whole program for our graduating fourth years. We are so excited. My dog is excited, clearly, too, in the background. We have got a great program for you tonight, brought to you by all three of our organizations. Let me introduce our other speakers for tonight. We've got a great panel to help you understand the virtual road to residency. So first, I'll introduce Dr. Minerva Romero Arenas. There she is, beautiful Minerva from down in Texas. And we've got Dr. Brandy Freeman.
Good evening.
Beautiful Brandy, living out in Colorado. And then we've got Dr. Renee Volney-Darko.
Hi.
There we go, out there in Pennsylvania. We are scattered around the country, and we are talking with you tonight. Again, we're all mentors with the Tour for Diversity in Medicine. Please check out our website and learn more about us. But tonight is not about us. It's really about you guys. I'm a family physician working with the VA here in DC. Minerva, why don't you tell everybody what you do a little bit?
Sure. I'm a general and endocrine surgeon. I am an alumni of the Latino Medical Student Association, and I'm a founding member of the Latino Surgical Society. Happy to be here. Happy to be here as a mentor for Tour for Diversity.
Thank you. Dr. Freeman, why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
Great. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Dr. Brandy Freeman. I am a general pediatrician at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, where I get to take care of fantastic kids. And then I'm also the Associate Vice Chair for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm a past president of the SNMA and have been hanging out with the Tour for Diversity in Medicine since its inception.
Excellent. And Dr. Renee, please tell the crowd about yourself.
Hi there. I'm Dr. Renee Volney-Darko, and I'm board certified OBGYN. Most of you might know me from Pre-Med Strategies, but today I am in the realm of residency with this wonderful panel. I'm a past chair of the board of directors of the SNMA, and I'm just really excited to be here and talk about how we can really increase your chances of getting into residency despite these pandemic times.
Perfect. All right. Why don't we jump into it? We are on live stream, so hopefully you guys feel comfortable, whatever platform you're on, Facebook, YouTube, to post questions. Hopefully we'll have some time to really jump into some of your issues. But this is the first workshop. We will have a second set of workshops that will give you all the dates on, focused on your individual specialties. We've lined up some unbelievable panels where we really want you to dig into what it's like to apply specifically in your field. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit more generally. So let's just jump on in. Dr. Minerva, why don't you go ahead?
All right, let's get it started. Are you sharing the screen? There we go.
There we go. We'll get it up there.
All right. So welcome, everyone. What we'll talk about today is a little bit of planning for your fourth year. What is ERAS? What's the NRMP? Keep an eye out for what your match calendar should look like. We'll also give you some tips about writing a good personal statement, getting strong letters of recommendation, and then, of course, virtual interviews, which is sort of the curveball that we got this year. Next slide, please. So there's a few important changes. The fourth year is generally revolves around scheduling your step 2. So if you haven't already taken it, certainly you should have a date in mind for your step 2 CK, the clinical knowledge portion. As you know, one of the big changes this year is that there's no step 2 clinical skills, and that exam has been postponed for the foreseeable future, at least through next year. Traditionally, this would be the time that a lot of students would be doing visiting electives or sub-internships. And as you know, that has definitely been placed on hold. So if you have a residency program in your institution, then essentially there are no away electives. Some really important exceptions to that will fall into some more specialized fields like orthopedics, neurosurgery, and some other subspecialty experiences that may not be available at your institutions. There will be some exceptions where students will be allowed to travel for specific learning experiences. So you definitely want to read through the fine print for that. Now, interviews are all going to be virtual this year. That's part of what we're planning to do with this workshop. I'm not going to delve too much into that this year. I'm not going to delve too much into that during this portion of the session, but we're going to touch on that a little bit later. In terms of research, if you haven't already engaged in research, definitely it's not something that you can necessarily jump on right at the last minute, but it is still possible to become involved by working on case reports, by working on some retrospective clinical reviews. This is not necessarily the time that you want to be starting a new lab type project that will take years to complete, because certainly you want to have all of those research projects completed prior to graduation. And then in terms of letters of recommendation, one of the big changes is that since you're not allowed to do away rotations, you certainly are not going to be able to get any letters of recommendation from away programs, but also you may be restricted in the faculty that you're able to work with during your clinical rotations. I know that we've had a lot of students who, for example, are applying in certain fields and they were not able to schedule an elective in that field in time for the deadline for letters of recommendation. So that's another aspect of the application cycle that has changed. One of the great things about this is that all of us are completely aware that this is a big challenge. And so you'll find that a lot of programs are being very flexible with the requirements for letters of recommendation, letters that come, for example, from the chair of the program in that specific discipline that you're applying to. There's going to be a lot of flexibility with who those letters should be coming from. But you want to look to your professional society. Everybody's got an academy or society that sort of heads that specific discipline. And so you want to look to their guidance documents that they've put out for the application cycle so that you know who the letters can come from and what kind of letters of reference they'll be accepting. In general, one of the key pieces of advice that I would have is to meet with your chair and meet with your mentors regularly, even if it is in a virtual setting like we're doing right now. Meet with people regularly so that when they write your letter, they have something to say that is personable about you and that carries a lot more than just reciting your CV or what grade you got during the time that they work with you. It really makes a big difference. And it really makes a big difference now that a lot of the clinical experiences were sort of truncated. Next slide, please. So the electronic residency application service, there are a few different ways that the ERAS works. Certainly as a student, the key piece that you see is called My ERAS, and all of you should have already received a token and a registration link from your own institution so that you can start completing this application. It's a pretty lengthy application, so you definitely want to work on this in small bits at a time because there are a lot of details that go into this. You essentially rebuild your CV, you outline all of your educational programs that you've completed. And so it's not something that you necessarily want to sit down and do in one day. And you want to pay enough attention to all those details, so you should break it up. Now, this is going to be the same portal where you're going to submit requests for your transcripts from the USMLE. It's also going to be the same spot where your letter writers will submit their letters of recommendation. And that's where you're going to select programs that will receive your actual residency application. On the school side, there's a special access port for the dean, where they'll submit your medical school performance evaluation and where they'll submit your school transcripts. For the letter writers, once you submit that request for a letter of reference, they will receive an email that says, please submit this letter directly to ERAS. And so you actually will really never see that letter. So it's important to note this because a lot of letter writers may not necessarily be familiar with this, and you have to let them know that they're not going to get an email from you, but that they have to submit it separately. And then in terms of the program directors for the residency, they have their own workstation that they can see your entire ERAS application in their own setting. Next slide, please. So now that we've talked about ERAS, that's the application side. You're then going to go through interviews, and you're going to then register for a totally separate portion of the process, which is called the MATCH, or the National Residency Matching Program. This is an area where you're going to submit what we call a rank list. This rank list will go through an algorithm to really match the student by rank to the program that wants that student most. So basically, it's meant to work in the favor of both the student and the program so that you're at the place that you like most and who also wants you just as much as you want to be there. So who is in the NRMP and what's the early match? So a lot of people who are applying in some specific disciplines like ophthalmology, like urology, they're going to be in a different match that we call the San Francisco or the early match. But most other disciplines will fall into the regular NRMP. Now, really to make that matching algorithm work, it's really meant for people to give their true preferences. Sometimes people try to play the game and try to sort of rank 1, 2, 3 according to where they think they have a better chance of matching. But in reality, that's not how it was built. It was really built to work on like true preferences. So you want to just be mindful of that. Next slide, please. So here's what we call, what we sort of outline as the match calendar. So the ERAS application system actually opened up back in June. And so like I mentioned, all of you guys should already be working on your ERAS application. In September, the match website will also open for registration. And so it's really important that you know that you have to register for that separately. Otherwise, you won't be able to submit a ranking list. A big change this year was the date that you can start submitting ERAS to residency programs. So in previous years, it's usually around Labor Day when you can start submitting letters, your entire application to the residency program. This year, because of all of the uncertainty with COVID and the rotation schedule, that actually has been pushed back an entire month. So residency programs will actually not be able to see your application until October. After that, you'll go through a period of the virtual interviews and some downtime to sort of think about your ranking. And in February, the NRMP will open for rank list submissions. Now, I want to point out that you can change and modify that rank list every day right up until the deadline. And that deadline occurs in March. And it's actually on March 3rd that you actually have to not only create the rank list, but you have to certify that that is your final rank list and that is the final order of where you would want to train for your residency. After that, you've got a couple of weeks until match day, which is a really exciting and fun day in everybody's medical school experience. Next slide, please. So again, this is just showing you a basic outline. The ERAS application system should have already been started for everyone. In September, you'll register for the match program. In October is when residency programs will start to get your application. So for all of the disciplines, especially surgery, you know that if you're not early, you're late. And so for all surgeons, I would recommend submitting your application and having everything ready for that October 1st date. In January, the NRMP standard registration deadline comes up. And so you definitely want to make sure that you register for the match program by then. You can start creating rank lists in February. And again, that deadline to certify that rank list is in March 3rd. So down below, you can see a couple of general points of where you're going to be during this application cycle. Right now, a lot of you are probably completing sub-internships. And this is a time where it tends to be clinically busy. In November and January, you're going to be really experiencing all of the virtual interviews. And then again, in the spring, it's really when you want to be doing electives and you don't want to be doing too much of the heavy work. Some of you may actually be looking at completing some makeup work or makeup rotations from last year for those of you that ended up having to be pulled out of the official clerkships. But this is generally an area of an overview of where we, what kind of things you see in the fourth year. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of an overview about the specific match week. And match week really starts on that Monday prior to match day. You're going to get an email in the midday, and everybody gets it at the same time across the country. But you get an email that basically says you have matched, and hopefully everybody on this webinar is definitely in that list. But sometimes you get an email that says we have not been able to match you yet. At that point, some students may enter what we call the SOAP program. In the past, it used to be called the Scramble, and now it's called the SOAP. But essentially, it's a supplemental offer and acceptance program whereby on a series of days, starting that Tuesday, Wednesday, there's a series of rounds where students can re-interview for any open position that remains across the country. And you can do what we call a secondary match during that week. Now, for everybody who receives an email that Monday that says you have matched, you're only going to get that confirmation that you matched. You won't actually find out where you matched until match day. And so after the SOAP ends on March 18th, you're going to go into that March 19th date, and that's when your medical school is going to have the match day ceremony. And everybody does it at the same time across the country, and that's when you find out where you're going to be for the next portion of your training. Next slide. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Matthews.
All right, thank you, Minerva. And we actually do have a bunch of questions that I wanted to make sure we touched on just before we stepped away from the calendar. Is it the October 1st that they start to see the applications, or is it the 21st? I think we actually might not have updated that date. Brandy, you're nodding.
Remember correctly, it is going to be the October 21st date from.
Yeah, I think it's later in the 21st. And then how are schools going to be evaluating students who do not get their scores in by the 21st? Excellent. This looks so official. I love this. Can anybody answer that? Minerva, how's your school going to be evaluating students?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility with that. Certainly, there's a big delay with students not being able to, one, just schedule a test or an examination date safely. There's been a lot of activities and events occurring around the country. So I think you're going to find that there's a lot of flexibility. If your application is incomplete at that time, what I generally recommend is that you contact the program and that you say, my application was submitted on this date, but now I've just received this portion which was missing. Please, make sure that your program looks at it. And you certainly want to do that. Keep that lines of communications open with the program coordinators so that they're aware. This is something that we traditionally would recommend you do anyway with your letters of recommendation, for example, or for students who did the step 1 but didn't have the step 2 scores like in normal times, in pre-COVID era. So that's not necessarily something that is new advice, but just know that we're all being a lot more flexible but the onus is on you to sort of push the notch a little bit to get people to look at your application if you know that you're missing specific components.
Perfect. All righty, let's jump back into the slide. Thanks, guys, for the questions. We'll definitely get to them. What we wanted to highlight, and actually, if you want to show these slides full on, we have a lot of good graphics and actually data. I don't know how many of you even jump into some of this data, but this is information from earlier this year, that 80.8% of applicants actually matched into PGY1. 94.6% of positions were filled. So these are good odds, but at the same time, if some of you are truly as pessimistic as some of us tend to be, you might be thinking, oh, but that's still 20% of us that don't match. That's still 6% that aren't filled. That's probably not as scary. And so the odds are still pretty much ever in your favor, but at the same time, we need to make sure you're, posing yourself as positively as possible to actually get matched, which is why, again, stressing what Dr. Romero definitely said, this is not something you mess around with as far as your preferences. Make sure that you're using and understanding that the algorithm is really about who you choose. Since 2019, this past match, we actually saw some increases in numbers across the board as far as applicants, and more of us in primary care, yay family medicine, we're up to 63% of our positions filled, 77% Dr. Freeman, that's pretty good, 77.3% in pediatrics. So just some general information that NRMP releases. But let's dig into it even more. Again, these are charts, guys. These are PDFs that you can download and look at. I don't know if you really need to worry about a lot of this detail yourself, but we wanted you to have an understanding of what you're up against, not for competitive reasons, but just so that you can kind of understand the full scope of the match. So the majority of those applying for the match are from MD granting schools. We've got smaller numbers from DO schools, but a pretty larger chunk from international medical schools. I don't know how many of you are on here listening, but you should know, of course, that you're a pretty critical part to the health system as well, too. And so definitely make sure you understand all of these processes as well. There's a good chunk of non-US citizens applying from the international medical schools as well. And then they do separate out those who have already graduated from MD and DO schools. You can see those numbers, about 1,500 of MD, 573 from DO. Those are the students that unfortunately didn't necessarily match. So they're no longer senior students, as you see in the green and the purple. But there is a good chunk of students that have graduated previously that matched in this 2020 year. All right. Nice and colorful, nice and graphic. We're scientists. We got to understand this. Over time, the trends of who is actually in the first year of graduate medical education from both allopathic and an osteopathic standpoint, you've got pretty much a steady rate of people who are AOA, that top brown color there, but that by no means is the largest portion. Obviously, many of us don't make that. Let's not even worry about that qualification. Honestly, a DO equals an MD equals a DO, and who cares if you have AOA? Okay, some people care, but really, this is about making sure that you get to the program that you want to be at and that you're trained appropriately. Let's not worry about these additional qualifications at this point. All right, so we're seeing increasing portions. That's how you raise this in kind of this orangey, weird, peachy color there. Increasing proportions from back in 2002 all the way to 2018 of osteopathic seniors and graduates matching. That's great news. Also increasing portions of allopathic seniors matching in that dark blue, medium blue across the bottom. So overall, we have increasing number of positions as well from 16 years ago. But this is a great set of trend lines. All right, so by field, the number of positions offered, the number of applicants, the number of applicants per position, so you can actually know kind of your possibilities here, and then the number of people who matched and not matched. These are particularly DO senior applicants that they're showing here. In our next slide, we'll get into MD. Let me leave this here, but just make sure we highlight. Let me call out my own field. Again, I'm a family doc, proud and true. We offered 4,600, just over 4,600 positions, 4,900 applied. So there's a little bit of risk there, a little bit of competition. So about 84 of them didn't match. But nationwide, with 1,200 of us matching, those are pretty good odds. But then let's look at some of these other ones. Neurosurgery. Again, those are DO matches. I apologize. This is DO. But look at neurosurgery. We had 3 DOs match, 12 did not match out of 383 applicants for 232 positions. So this is giving you a little bit, I'm already feeling it across the airwaves. I'm feeling a little bit of stress, but you should know, understand, and have an understanding, honestly, of what it's like as far as just the sheer odds. We're not even looking at, again, AOA or your letters of recommendations, your scores and everything. This is just sheer odds. So you have an understanding perhaps of how many programs you need to apply to, what the competition should look like. Here you go with the MD, the allopathic seniors applying. So let's look at the same fields. We had about 1,400 MD seniors match, 56 did not match in family medicine versus neurosurgery. 203 matched and 67 did not match. So this is, again, just about the data, just about the numbers, and just about your odds here. Let's make sure that you have an understanding, again, of the number of positions that are offered and how you can increase just your odds before we consider what's going on in your application and how your interviews go. All right, our international medical grads, got to show you those numbers as well, too. We had a fair portion in family medicine, 638 matched, 488 didn't of US citizens, and then smaller numbers for non-US citizens. But then let's look at neurosurgery again, 6 international medical grads, US citizens matched, 7 didn't, 12 matched from non-US. So again, sheer odds here. Total positions offered across the board, of course, aren't changing. We've got internal medicine at the highest, family medicine, then pediatrics. Gotta love our primary care docs. But again, understanding where your field lies as far as the number of positions, it could give you a little bit more information about how you're going to rank, meaning the number of programs that you're going to rank. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Freeman to keep showing you a little bit of the data.
All righty. So looking at these slides, I think the first thing I want you to holistically appreciate for them that outside, for most fields, these rates are really good. This first slide that we're looking at is for our DO seniors, and it's the percent who match by preferred specialty. And you'll notice that for all fields except for neurosurgery, it's above 50%. Which is really good if you think about it. And then if you're looking at some other specialties, whether it's internal medicine, pediatrics, that we're above 90% in those fields. So I think we're trying to get back into the good news here. The likelihood of matching is very high. Let's go to the next slide. And here we're looking at our allopathic graduates. Here are the numbers overall for, I believe, in every single field, it's above 70% in terms of US MD seniors who are matching in their preferred specialty. And in some fields, radiation oncology of all things was 99.2%. So what that tells us is that if you are prepared and you are ready and you are appropriately preparing your application for your field, the likelihood of matching is very good. And then the next slide. And so then looking at international medical graduates. So some differences between US international medical graduates and non-US international medical graduates. But overall, somewhat of the same proportions as you see for allopathic and osteopathic graduates in terms of, for most fields, the likelihood of matching is very good. And so as we move to the next slide, we're going to talk about things that you're going to do for your application to help you set yourself apart. So the first is the personal statement. I feel like this is an area that sometimes applicants may not pay as much attention to as they need to. I think it is an area that can really help boost your application. if it's very good. If it's just okay, it won't harm you. But if there are issues, it can be a dagger. So I think in particular, things that I've seen that have been problems are misspelled words, things that are not in the right context in terms of whether there's a word missing in the sentence, that sort of thing. Things that just seem like you didn't take the time to have pay attention to detail in terms of your preparation and presentation of that. This is the one area where you can be somewhat creative. I caution students, you don't necessarily want to write a limerick or something like that for your personal statement, but you can exercise some creativity in it. You want to make sure that you are clearly stating why you are interested in your field, what you've done to prepare for it, and why you are going to be the best candidate that this program is looking at. And in addition, if there are any issues in your application, that's something you're going to want to address in your personal statement. You're not going to want to spend your entire time on that. But if there is something that needs to be addressed, whether it's a failure or a leave of absence or something to that effect, to make sure that you are presenting it in the light that you want it presented. Because otherwise, selection committees will get creative. So make sure you are putting what you want out there through your personal statement. And the next slide. And then letters of reference. So this is an area where I feel that most students are asking for the strong letter, but I can't say that that is 100%. In terms of each year when I look at applications, probably 1 in 10 applications, there's a letter that's either very brief or very general. And I always worry because that is harmful to the student. So when you're asking for your reference writers to write these letters, make sure you're giving them time so that they're able to put their best foot forward in terms of presenting you. Make sure that you provide them with your CV and your personal statement. So this is why, as Dr. Romero Arenas was speaking about earlier, you have to be on the ball in terms of getting all of these things together, because you're going to want to be able to give your letter reference writers enough time, and also make sure that everything that they need from you is done by that time. And then making sure you're returning it or explaining them how to return it. Admittedly, even for me, someone who goes into ERAS and is looking at applications, that letter writing process seems a little unclear. If I miss that email for ERAS or don't have that student's number, I'm not going to be able to submit that. So make sure that you are providing that information to your reference writers so they can get that in for you in a timely fashion. And once again, in closing, make sure that you ask for a strong letter and specify for everyone, just a letter is not going to do it. You want someone who's going to be able to speak to you and articulate what you want and what you need to be sold to a program. And then for certain specialties, they're going to want certain letters from you, whether it's if you're applying to an osteopathic program, they want to make sure that you've worked with an osteopathic physician, or to make sure that if you're applying in pediatrics, some programs want letters that are from an inpatient experience and an outpatient experience. Make sure that you're looking at those criteria and are providing what a program wants for you. All right. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Volney Darko, who's going to give you some great tips.
All right, everyone. I hope you've been taking notes because the information that you've been getting so far is extremely, it's invaluable. So let's get into the residency interviews. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so when you're thinking about your residency interviews, first thing you want to do is make sure that all the things that were said before, right, that you're handing in your application, your letters of recommendation, that everything that you're putting together, you have to know about, okay? So you want to be consistent when you're in your interviews. So be sure to practice your answers, but not necessarily memorize them, right? So you don't want to verbatim memorize your personal statement, but you want to be able to familiarize yourself with what you said in it, familiarize yourself potentially with, whomever wrote your letter of recommendation, even though you may not know what's in it, but at least understand and know kind of what the experiences were with this person. Sometimes some people say, hey, put a Post-it note on your screen for reminders. that may or may not work for you, but you also don't want to cover your entire screen with Post-it notes. Okay, so remember that you don't want to be distracted, but you want to prepare, and you don't want to memorize your answers, but you want to seem authentic. Next slide, please. All right, so you have to be professional from the start to the finish. Okay. So there, usually when you're doing an in-person interview, one of the things that I recommend that students do is you start being professional as soon as you walk outside of your door. Literally, as soon as you walk outside of your door, even if you are traveling. Now, in the case of virtual interviews, okay, that still applies. As soon as you turn on your computer, it's time to start being professional, okay? Because you just never know once you click that link, what is going to pop up, okay? So you don't know if you're going to appear right away necessarily, depending on the forum that they're going to be using, the platform that they're going to be using. So make sure that you know where you're looking, okay? So you're not looking this way or that way. You're looking straight into the camera. What you're wearing is professional. So just because it's a virtual interview doesn't make it any less formal. And you also want to watch what facial expressions you're making, right? I mean, even with an in-person interview, you still want to make sure that your facial expressions really reflect something of professionalism. You don't want to be scrunching up your nose and, kind of like looking like confused and things like that. So again, treat the moment as if you were in person. Next slide. All right. Manage your time. Okay. You need to manage your time. I know that sometimes, it becomes difficult to just kind of talk into a camera, especially, because you're used to people kind of interacting with you in a closer space, but you need to manage your time, but don't manage your time so much that you're actually rushing. Okay. You want to come off natural. You want to come off authentic. You want to speak naturally. So again, if you have these Post-it notes that are on your computer, okay, you don't want to be reading off them. Or again, you don't want to be memorizing your answers, because again, that most likely is not going to come off very naturally. But you also want to get to the point. All right. So you don't want to give one word answers necessarily, but you also don't want to ramble on to the point where your interviewer is like, I don't even know what question I asked you anymore. Okay. So next slide, please. All right. So your interview space. Okay. This can be a challenge for some people, depending on where you live. But if you can, even if it's just a back wall, like you see behind me, okay, even if it's just the back wall, just have some place that is well lit and clean, and preferably quiet, of course, right? So, again, I know this can be a challenge depending on where people live. If you live in a place where, you share a space with someone, or you have kids and like that they're not going to be quiet, then what I recommend is actually taking your interview somewhere else. Okay. Taking it somewhere else, either at a friend's house. I know that coffee shops aren't necessarily open, and things like that, but try to maybe even rent, a small space if you can. So, and I know, again, it is challenging because of the times that we're in, and some of those options are very limiting, but if you can, please, a neutral background, well lit and clean. You don't want your interviewer to be distracted by anything behind you. Also, if your background isn't necessarily neutral, in other words, if it's not just a blank wall, if you do have things behind you, just be mindful of what you do have behind you, right? You don't necessarily want your political leanings, behind you in big, bold letters, because this is just not the place for that. All right. So again, well lit, clean, quiet, and neutral. Next slide, please. So in your interview space, use a desk. Okay. Do not hold your laptop on your lap. I know it's called a laptop, but ironically, you actually need a desk for your laptop. Okay. Please make sure that you have a nice and steady picture for your interviewers. Again, it can be very distracting if this is going on. Okay, this is really not what you want going on during your interview. It can be extremely distracting, so use a desk. Next slide. All right, equipment. Laptop or desktop with a webcam is preferred. Okay, that is going to be your go-to as far as equipment. You can use a tablet. Okay, sometimes, however, tablets, and depending on the platform that you're on, they might have some limited features. Okay, so sometimes, if for any reason you needed to share your screen or you needed to, do anything else on that screen, a tablet may not necessarily give you the feature that you need in comparison to a desktop or a laptop. So preferably a laptop or a desktop with a webcam. Your phone obviously is going to be your last choice. Okay. I think that most people can tell when someone's on the phone. Now, I will say that if you are on a phone, it's probably best to go horizontally than it is to go vertically, just so that it just appears a little more natural, because most likely your interviewers are going to be on a computer and their picture is also going to be horizontal. So if you're going to use a phone, at the very least, like I said, it's your last choice, but at the very least, go horizontal with your picture. A headset or earphones would also be a great choice for equipment. Earphones, much more than a headset, or even if you have those like ear pods or whatever, something that is pretty subtle. Okay, headsets can be pretty bulky and they can, again, be a little distracting to the interviewers. And headsets also tend to make the interviewee a little more distracted because you're constantly trying to adjust them. So earphones, ear pods, whatever, or AirPods, or whatever you call these things, are probably your best bet. The other reason that you want to use earphones or a headset is because there's a mic on the device. Sometimes the mic on your computer makes your voice sound very, very far away. You sound extremely low, and you either have to come very close to the camera, which I'm going to show you why you don't want to be so close to the camera, or you end up shouting, which is not a good look for you, right? We want to stay professional. The other thing is also make sure that you know whether or not the platform that the school is using requires some software download. So you need to, again, prepare for your interview. So if you get your interview information a couple of days before, 48 hours before or so, you should actually be checking to see whether or not you need to download any software, because you don't want to be logging in 5 minutes before and then realize, oh my gosh, this software takes 7 minutes to download. Okay. Or you just don't know how to download it and you have to troubleshoot. Next slide, please. All right. Just what I said, test, run your equipment. Okay. Make sure that everything is working. So if for example, you're on Zoom or something and you want to test it out with a friend, go ahead and do that. You want to be able to know where on your computer, okay, your app for your camera is and the app for your mic is, because sometimes, again, depending on the platform, not all platforms are the same. Some platforms will not necessarily pick up, for example, the external mic, and you need to know where the app is sometimes so that you can allow that platform to access the external mic. Okay, same thing with the camera. You might need to go into the app on your computer to allow that platform to, again, access that webcam function. So test run your equipment. Next slide. All right, positioning. Remember, I told you before that if you don't necessarily have the right mic, for example, you might end up coming closer to the camera. Here's the reason that you don't want to do that, okay? Positioning is extremely important. We want as much as possible for your interviewer to feel like this is, kind of a normal setting, okay? You don't want them to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm looking into a webcam. You want to look as natural as someone would, looking at a panel on, TV, right, on your favorite cable network, for example. Okay. So you're going to have the camera at or near eye level. Okay. So your actual camera, okay, needs to be at or near eye level. So wherever your camera is, that's where you need to line it up with your eye. There are some computers, like my husband's computer, the camera is actually so well below, okay, it's almost at the base near the keyboard. That becomes a little more challenging. If that's the case, then try to get an external webcam so that you can put it on top of your laptop, and that way you're still at eye level. Okay, you want to have your light source in front of you, but behind your camera. Okay, so right now I have a huge ring light, okay, and it's sitting behind my camera and I am sitting in front of my camera, okay? And your shoulders should always be in the frame, all right? Again, if you don't have a great mic and they can't hear you, you tend to go a little bit closer, and that makes for a very, very unnatural feeling, and then you're going to feel a little awkward and unnatural, and it just makes everything awkward. Next slide. So here we go. All right. So on the left side, you can see there's the talking head. Okay. So kind of what I was talking about before, if you get too close to your camera, you can also see that her camera is not at eye level. We know that because one, we can see her ceiling. Okay. So we know that she's actually looking down at the camera. We can see her nostrils. So she is not at eye level. This is pretty awkward looking frame. And on the right, you see that the student is, completely in frame. She is at eye level or near eye level. Her shoulders and even half of her torso is in the frame. So you can see actually what she is wearing. So you see that she looks professional. On the left, you don't know if that's a robe. You don't know if that's a jacket and shirt. You have no clue what she's wearing. So you don't know whether or not she looks professional. So on the right is how you want to appear in your frame. Next slide, please. And remember that medicine is still a very conservative industry. So your dress should be, should be conservative. You should be wearing business attire, preferably again, dark suit and light shirt, as in the picture. Next slide. But you do want to wear bottoms. Okay. I think we all are aware of what happened this summer, right? So in the land of COVID, everybody was doing Zoom conferences, even the news. And so this gentleman appeared on a interview, on a TV interview, and was not aware that his thigh was showing. So please wear bottoms, preferably very professional bottoms, right? So no pajamas on the bottom and business up on top. Okay. Next slide. Now, in terms of your presentation starts actually before your interview starts. Okay. So early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. So early is on time is, again, that goes back to prepping for your interview. So if you prep and software download, you tried the equipment and everything is working, you're going to log on potentially 10 minutes before if you can, so that your interviewers are not waiting for you. On time is late means that, hey, if you get there right on time and your interviewers have been waiting for you, then that's not a good look, right? Because really you're the one looking for the opportunity. So you should be the one front and center and waiting for them to get on. And obviously late is just unacceptable. Okay. So I don't know that there, especially now, is going to be an excuse as to why someone is late, barring, hurricane season. Maybe you might not have any power or anything, but late is typically unacceptable. Next slide, please. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Matthews.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much. Hopefully you got a few pointers, maybe some things you didn't quite think about. I know this is a very different world that we're in, and the formality of probably what we've all been doing quite informally over the past 6 months or so is what's going to make this a little different. I see a comment in the chat. I think it's a great idea that perhaps each of you could be reaching out if your school hasn't already reached out to maybe have rooms at the school to use the Wi-Fi, to have rooms with lighting. Exactly, there's the question. Maybe your schools can help you out and give you some space where you can perform these interviews. I've been a part of different workshops, even competitions, not having to do with med school. Not it's already competitive enough, but honestly, my husband does these competitions online, and I don't know how many students have been having difficulty because they just had poor Wi-Fi access. So if you have, a strong connection at school, both Wi-Fi and faculty or your dean's office or somebody, please look into that, because I think that's an absolutely great idea. And perhaps some of the professionalism of sitting at school and doing this can help you kind of be in that mode, like Renee was talking about. We were also chatting on the side, a couple of other pointers. There's really good kind of lights. Renee mentioned the ring lights. That's something that's very professional. You can get those online. Some of them can be a little expensive, but there's also kind of desktop size ones, small ones that you can place right behind your laptop here and get really good lighting. That's pretty critical. I'm even looking at my screen now and it looks a little grainy. I should have a light on me. So want to try things out. Look on Amazon, talk amongst yourselves and figure out where other students are getting some of these things. Amazon's a great place. Not that I want to promote Amazon right now, but it's a great place to at least research and find some different tools to help the way you present yourself most positively. You have to remember everything on that screen, every facial communication that you make, everything's going to be interpreted in the same exact way as an in-person interview. So it's important, and we want you to be as favorable as possible, including the dog shaking in the background. Did everybody just hear that? Please put your dogs away. Please, he just won't leave my side. He has separation anxiety, but don't do that during interview. This is it. Number one, do not do that and have a dog behind you in the interview. So let's go into next steps. Really, we have been really happy to work with the organizations, LMSA and SNMA, to bring this program together. It's the first time, honestly, on the tour that we've done med school-based programming. We usually do a lot of outreach for pre-med students, both college and high school. But all of us came through LMSA and SNMA, and we really wanted to make sure that we connected with you guys as much as possible to make sure that this interview season, this application season was positive. So that's why we kind of set up this program. So please, rewatch this video, or if you took notes, make sure you map out your calendar, know when you're going to have everything in place, know, if there's anything additional at school that you need to do as far as talking to your faculty about letters of rec and everything. Get yourself a calendar and map that out. This year is so critical. And because, again, it's going to be very different how you're going to learn even about the interviews and get those on the calendar. Please make sure you plan accordingly. We are going to show you in a second when our next set of workshops are. Again, they are broken out in specialties. And please attend those. We have unbelievable faculty. Again, family medicine. I have brought together some unbelievable program directors and faculty to talk with you about what it is to apply in family medicine, how to choose between programs. All of our different specialty panels are focused on that same exact thing. This is one of the pieces that's most scary for me personally. I didn't know which program I wanted until I visited, and you guys aren't going to have that opportunity. So how do you know? Ask those hard questions. Get on these panels and ask those hard questions of these program directors. Make sure you schedule your mock interviews. You should have gotten the email already of who your matched person is. Y'all, we had huge numbers. This is like an unbelievable program that we're excited about. We had double the number of faculty interested in helping you guys out. You should know from around the country, they wanted to help you, SNMA and LMSA. We have plenty of people out here willing to help you. And so we matched you as close as we could. Just because we had numbers doesn't mean that we had everyone in every field, especially a lot of you applying in joint programs. So we matched you as closely as we could. Please reach out if you haven't already to your assigned faculty person. They've been given some instructions. Please feel free to communicate with them. Some don't go crazy though. Some may just really be interested in the mock interview. Some may want to give you feedback on your CV, your personal statement, all of that. It is up to them. They are committed to doing this mock interview with you, but additional communication is up to them. But please reach out. Please ask if they're interested. Again, we had hundreds, I'm not even exaggerating, guys, hundreds of docs that were interested in helping you guys. So if any of you, like we said in the email that came out to you, if any of you feel like you're having a little bit of difficulty with your faculty member or anything, I don't think you will. Again, these are all volunteers. This isn't just part of their day job. They're doing this out of the goodness of their heart. But if any of you are having problems, please email that email address in the letter, and we'll see what we can do to get you some additional help. Please attend the upcoming residency fairs. LMSA and SNMA have unbelievable programs. Guys, you guys are sought after this year. We need you to get into the right program. We need you to meet these programs so you can make the right decisions. And that's what these residency fairs and programs are about. There's also other ones that are hosted by individual schools. East Coast to West Coast, there's different residency fairs where you can come in and talk across multiple programs, even if you're doing one of those joint programs. So please attend those. And then we're going to be emailing out surveys. We'd love your input on how this program went. Please take some time. You guys know what it's like, especially doing research and everything. We'd love some data on how you guys are doing, how this program works. We're going to be doing the same thing, I think, Brandy, I'm putting it out there, of surveying maybe even the faculty. Like, this is a huge effort, guys. Again, a couple hundred of you join this program, and we have even more faculty. So it'd be great if we could really prove to everyone how much, you know, our communities are coming together to support each other, especially during this pandemic, especially as we've gone virtual. Maybe it's more positive, maybe not, but your filling out of that survey will help. All right, so just to share now your different panels, please mark your calendars. You're going to get direct email with the Zoom links on how to join each of these panels. For those of you who are applying in kind of joint dual programs, you can choose one or the other to attend. There's a handful of you, but we do have a Med Peds panel coming up on the Monday. So hopefully you guys won't have a problem choosing between them. We have a couple where we're still setting the date, CT surgery and PM&R. Those are still getting lined up, and so we'll get that information out to you. Orthopedic surgery, you guys are going to have a special treat. Hopefully many of you know about the organization Nth Dimensions. They are going to take over your specialty panel and education from here on out, and they're going to reach out and set up a special panel for you guys in September. They're really excited to bring that to you, and most likely most of you applying into ortho are already aware and connected to them. But that's a great treat as well too. But guys, these panels, you should know, there was extreme excitement about setting these up. Again, there's a lot of interest in helping you. We've got different NMA sections, both ophthalmology and urology, who are stepping in to do this. Of course, Dr. Romero is bringing it hard with the general surgery coming up this Thursday. Like I said, I'm representing hard for family medicine. I have 2 program directors, a former program director, and another faculty member coming on board. So all of these, please get to know these people. Yes, they may be at some of the schools you're applying to, but don't be scared about that. Connect with them. This is a way for them to get to know you and for you to know them. Remember, the interview process, the application process is 2-way. You are choosing them as much as they are choosing you, because trust me, they need you. So please don't be nervous about connecting with these people on a personal level. And again, we'll email out these registration links for you guys. Thanks for the questions, Ariana. I'm sorry we couldn't pull together a pathology panel, but you do have a mock interview. So please, in fact, if you need some help connecting with your faculty member for maybe a little bit more conversation outside of the mock interview, we'll do what we can there. But yeah, we weren't able to coordinate panels in all of the fields, but we also didn't have applicants in all of the fields, honestly, guys. So we'll do it again. Please email us if you have any questions. And like, is being posted right now. We still have the specialty series going on in SNMA, Sowing Seeds. LMSA is also having unbelievable programming, guys. Please take part in all of these. The Sowing Seeds is really more kind of general information about the field. Sorry, my dog again. Where the Applying to Residency panels are supposed to be a little bit more focused to your experience coming up in this applications process. But with that, were there any questions that I missed, guys? I don't think so. All right. Looks like we're pretty good. Let's see, this question, I feel like it's come up a couple times, and I don't know, Brandy or Minerva, if you can answer this. Can you walk us through receiving interviews? How do you get invited? Do you get an email? Do you get a phone call? What happens?
For most places, it's going to be an an email. So you're gonna, I'm sure you're actually on your phone and computer all the time right now, but you're going to want to watch that. A lot of places use scheduling systems where when you get that invitation, there's going to be a link where you then go in and click to find out when the availability is. I think a lot of programs are trying to figure out the logistics of that right now as well, in terms of the numbers they're going to be able to do and the days and that's the specifics of that. But definitely you're going to want to have an email address. We did not say it, but it's also could be a good idea to have just an email for interviews. I know a lot of students have them. It's like Brandy Freeman ERAS is the email address, so that you're able to know specifically that's the only information that's corresponding through that address, so that you won't miss anything.
Perfect. Thank you, Brandy. All right, guys, we are coming down actually a little bit over the hour. I think actually this is a great question. This will be the last one, then we close it out. Do you guys, and particularly Brandy and Minerva with your programs or whatever, do you have a sense of how long interviews are going to be? Are you guys talking about it being like, how's the interview day going to be structured, right? Like we all had a day where you got to tour, and you got to sit with the residents sometimes, and you had an introductory program with the program director, and then maybe you had 20-minute interviews, 30-minute interviews. It differed all around. It's probably still going to differ, right? Like there's probably not much we can say, and you guys will just learn when you get the invite and the itinerary. But any more to add to that?
I think there's going to be a lot of variability for that within specialties, within programs, where everyone's going to figure out what works for them. Our program is talking about using Instagram a lot, actually, and doing virtual days. You can kind of follow us through the program. So I think it's going to be, every place is going to be different. We're all figuring this out as well. And I see one question in here that I was going to address too. So submitting LORs after submitting our ERAS application on October 21st, I think in terms of that, as much as possible, I would encourage students to make sure everything is in, because there's got to be, I think, it's going to be a little bit more hectic because we have a lot less time to review. And so a letter not being there, if there was a requirement for letters, could create a pause that you don't want. So if all possible, have everything in by that date to just make sure we're able to fully review everything at once.
Perfect. All right, guys, we're going to close it out with that. Thank you so much to SNMA and LMSA for letting us bring this together. Again, we're Tour for Diversity in Medicine. Please check us out, Tour for Diversity, all over social media. I'm sure Love is about to post it or already has. We're also called T4D. Please definitely look out for the links and the different advertisements about our specialty panels, and make sure you follow up with your assigned faculty for your mock interviews. But thank you guys so much. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you soon. Surgeons Rock, Family Doc Rock.